Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Free Your Story, Free Your Life. My name is Amy Kochek, and it has been some time since I've done an episode. And like I said in the last episode, I'll give you a bit of an explanation. But the first thing is a lot of heavy shit has been going on in my life. And for me, I feel like I always default to this idea of like, I want to share. I want to share what's going on. I learn by discourse. I learn by talking and getting things out. And really half the things I say, I don't even know where I'm at as far as how much I even believe the things that I'm saying. It's just literally taking the broken pieces in my mind and just sharing them and then figuring out how to move from there. So I've always been a quick sharer. And for some reason, at this point in my life, I keep feeling like I'm getting pulled into a more intimate, quiet time with myself. And there's two ways that I have been responding to this. One way that I've been responding to this is panic, because I think, well, I need to be sharing, and I need to let people know, like, what if other people are struggling and going through the same thing, and I have a responsibility, right? The worker performance-based need for validation and affirmation for myself, that side of me is always very quick to incorporate people into my journey and incorporate people into the story of my life. And that is my default. That's what I've always known. And the other side of that is a calm within myself that just says, not now. This is for you. This is just for you. And it's been a combination of a lot of anger, a lot of tears, a lot of frustration, and then on the other side of it, a whole lot of beauty. And I know when I tell people things like, yeah, I've been really angry lately. And yeah, I've been really struggling with bouts of depression and anxiety and feeling like my life is so chaotic. There are days when I feel like I'm just lost in life. And I'm, similar to just going outside and not having a point of destination and just walking. At some point, that shit gets old. Where are we walking to? Like I'm tired. And this journey is not so fun when I don't know where I'm going. I always tell my students when I'm talking about writing, there's a side of writing that I really enjoy, which is the predictable side. And a lot of the educational side is very predictable, right? You have your thesis, which is the contract with the reader that says, hey, when you come on this journey to read my writing, here's where we're going. Right? And I'm going to give you cues, and each paragraph has a transition and you move from one to the next. And people are more willing to go on that type of journey because it's comfortable for us. It's comfortable for me to say yes to a journey in which I'm signing off and I'm saying, yeah, I know where we're going. And then as we're going on the journey, you're giving me cues that says, okay, now we went here. Now we're going to go there. That's a very comfortable journey for me. Hell yes. Sign me up. But something very different happens when you sign up for a journey that says, I don't know what the end result is going to be. And I'm going here, but I don't really know where here is. I have like an idea as I'm going. I don't necessarily have cues that are taking me there. Sometimes it's literally just a feeling in my gut. Which, of course, when you grow up in an environment where feelings are the enemy and you are told consistently to not trust your feelings and that your feelings lie to you, that's a hard road to go on, because now I have to repair my relationship with my feelings and first of all, apologize to my feelings and let them know, like, no, you're valuable. They are facts. Feelings are facts. Right? They are symptoms. They are guiding us into something deeper. They're not the period, but they definitely are the comma. They're not something that we just cut out of our lives. So now I have to repair my relationship with my feelings, tell them I'm sorry, also tell them that all of them are valid and that none of them are ranked higher than the others. I have to look at my sadness and my depression and look at my anxiety and look at my overwhelm and my shame and my regret. And I have to look at them and say, you're not bad. You're not evil. You're not yucky. When I feel those feelings, when you come into my body, I'm not angry with you. And I'm not there yet. Let me just say that. Some of the things I'm saying, it's literally like, it's like the words that are inside of me are coming out and they're teaching me. So just know that when I'm saying these things, I'm not saying them as if I've mastered them. And a lot of times I'm just talking because I feel like I'm in flow. And sometimes when I'm in creative flow, it's just whatever's in me. I'll listen back to some of these things and I'll be like, I don't know where that came from, but here it is. So please know that I'm not there yet, but this is what I am learning and what is being worked out in me and through me right now. So I have to repair my relationship with my feelings in general. And then I have to tell my feelings, let's go on a journey together, because you're all that I can rely on right now. Because the reliance just on my head knowledge and just on facts and just on comfort based on what I see and what is being told to me is the view of success. All of those things, even though that path is predictable, even though that path is more comfortable, even though that path has an expected end that's given to me, I know that when I walk down that path, I will not be fulfilled. I'll feel comfortable, but I will not be fulfilled. So now the lean into the other one. This podcast finds me back in St. Petersburg, Florida, where I returned the week of Thanksgiving. And many things led to me kind of diverting my path back home. None of them being negative, all of them actually being extremely positive. And one of the main things that brought me back was the revelation that I had found my home. And I addressed this a little bit in the last podcast. There is something to be said when you grow up in an environment where there's really no safe space to call home. So if you grew up in a traumatic, chaotic environment, there's an element of that that feels very unsafe. So when you grow up in those type of environments, you cannot feel as though you can rest and that there is safety. It's like there was a lot of love in my home. I cannot deny that. There was a lot of love. But piled on top of a lot of love was a whole lot of chaos and a whole lot of trauma and a whole lot of anger. And that environment was so stressful. So I never felt like I could be at rest and felt at home there. And also just felt very responsible for the relationships in my life, especially my family relationships. I don't know where this came from. I've been really reflecting on this. I don't know if this is something that I just internalized just based on my personality, based on the fact of being a middle child, based on birth order. I don't know. I know the idea of relationships being assignments was even that much more confirmed in the church environment. Because when you're in church, right, the way that a church building sustains itself is through members, is through tithe paying members, is convincing everyone to give 10% of their income to the church so that the church can continue to operate. So you do that by getting backsides and seats. So one of the ways that you do that is that you create this, and it was driven by guilt. You create this guilt-ridden assignment that everybody in your life is a soul. They're not just a person, they're a soul. And that soul is in need of salvation. And as a person who is saved, if you are saved, now you have a responsibility to any person that's in your life. This includes your family, your friends, but it also includes strangers that you might meet on the street or in the grocery store. You are responsible for those people's eternal souls. I remember when I was a kid, I was in middle school, and I was trying to witness to my friends. That's the term we use, right? Witness, which just means you're going up to someone and you're judging their life. You are informing someone. You might think that your life is good, but really it's not. Your life, if you have not followed this formula that is subjectively taught to us as an outline from the Bible. Microphone. We meet again. This microphone is very rebellious. And also, I believe, a messenger of Satan to distract me. You will not. Anyways, so the idea is, if you don't follow this formula, then you are going to go to hell. Doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter your demographic, doesn't matter your trauma, anything that you've experienced. If you haven't followed this, and I don't see you follow this, and especially in the organization that I grew up in, if you do not get baptized in Jesus' name, you're going to hell. If you have been baptized in the Father, Son, Holy Ghost, not good enough. You will go to hell. If you do not speak in tongues, you are not saved. You will go to hell. Now, I already know the language that we're going to use to defend that. Oh, who are we to put people in hell? We are people who put people in hell. That's what we're taught. So I don't care how nice we want to put it. That's what we're taught. So the idea was that when you come in contact with people, those are assignments. So it almost became a very manipulative, controlling situation, because now you're trying to figure out, how do I start a conversation that we can now talk about this person's eternal soul? And then how do I convince them to come to my church? And then once I convince them to come to my church, how do I get them to get baptized so that they can speak in tongues? Because then if they do that, this is what I'm told, I'll get a jewel on my crown. Because when you're in church, you're told that the end goal is, or the end prize of living this lifestyle, whatever that lifestyle is deemed. It's very subjective from church to church, from personality to personality. But this end goal of a life lived unto God, saved, quote unquote, you get a mansion in the sky, you get to walk on streets of gold, and then you get a crown. And each person who you win to Christ, you get a jewel. Each person that you essentially manipulate and convince that they are bad people, and then it doesn't matter what they're doing with their life, it's not good enough. And it doesn't matter how well they know God or what kind of spiritual experience they had. If it doesn't look like my experience, you're wrong. And now it needs to look like my experience, because only my experience is right. Like even saying it out of my mouth. Even saying it out of my mouth, how judgmental that sounds, but not just judgmental, how prideful that sounds to believe that one formula is created for every human being on the planet. And then just those two acts, being baptized in a specific formula and speaking in tongues, that those two things determine your eternal destiny. It's insane. So from a young age, we were encouraged to talk to our friends, to get our friends into church, to convince them that they are bad people and that there's something wrong with them. And of course, this is also being programmed at the same time that anything outside of our church building and anything outside of this group of people, even from church to church, nobody knows it better than us. Nobody has the truth as strongly as we do. Nobody else has this. We have this on lock, and everyone else is deceived. And especially people who are in the quote unquote world. These are bad people. Your friends, it doesn't matter how well intentioned they are, they're bad people, and their families are bad people. Now, we don't know them. We don't know anything that goes on behind closed doors. But because this formula, this propaganda is the main thing that we see, they're bad. So then all relationships become assignments, because the caveat to this is that we were then taught, if you die, and when you die, and you become judged, right? Because all of us are supposed to be judged by God to determine how many good things did you do and how many bad things did you do. And based on the bad things, was it bad enough to send you to hell? Because even somebody saved can go to hell. The concept just doesn't make sense. But anyways, if you are being judged and there's people who were in your life that you didn't witness to, that you didn't convince those people, control, manipulate those people into changing their lives, that you didn't share the good news with that person, their blood was on your hands. You were responsible for that soul. And as a middle schooler, I was walking around middle school trying to invite my friends to church, because in my mind, if I didn't invite my friends to church, all of my friends were going to burn in hell for eternity. And of course, this is literal for me. This wasn't a game. Like, I was in it. I was sincere. So I'm trying to get my friend, I'm 11, 12 years old, trying to get my friends into the church and like really trying to work on that. They're my assignment. And of course, I'm feeling the same about my family, and not from the standpoint of like wanting to save them, but they're my assignment. Every relationship is an assignment. And I'm going into that environment and I'm trying to give, like, what do I need to give you to help you? So then it became a very controlling and manipulative existence, because I'm feeling like I have a formula for everyone. I know what's best for everyone, because that's what I've been told in church. This formula, this is what's best for everyone, and it has to look like this. So the minute that you just give people that formula, they're good. You're helping them. Meanwhile, I'm living by this formula and I'm dying. I'm living by this formula and it's not life-giving. It's literally killing me. But I'm giving it to everyone else because that's what I'm told. You give it to everyone else. So all of these relationships are assignments. And it stops being about Amy. I don't even know when it was about Amy. And it's about everyone else. In fact, this idea of living for yourself, the idea of loving yourself, the idea of focusing on you, all of those things are demonized. If you're focusing on you, you're selfish, because there's a world that's dying. If you're spending time at home with your family, or you're just spending time with yourself, you're selfish, because you could be out knocking on doors. Right? So it wasn't just a responsibility for the people you knew. It was a responsibility. If you're going out for groceries and somebody makes eye contact with you twice and you didn't go up and tell them about Jesus, that might haunt you for weeks because you failed the assignment. That was the assignment. So I didn't even feel at home and at rest in my own body, because resting in my body to me was sinful. There was no rest. There was no home. And obviously that messaging is that this world is not my home. This fantasy of a eternal life with mansions and streets of gold, that's when I'll rest. Not here. This isn't it. So then it's a constant work upon work. So it's not only just my actual work, my actual career, it's that every moment I'm on and I'm working and there's no rest. Home is where I laid my head. That was it. Literally where I laid my head, and then I got up. I remember when I got my first apartment, and this has followed me for each apartment. I would never decorate. And I always wanted to decorate. And then I would lie to myself and be like, well, I'm just not a good decorator. There's levels to decoration, right? Like, there's some people who are just like very interior design oriented and know what to put. But really, decoration is just allowing your personality and allowing our creativity, which is gifted to all of us, to shine. What are things that bring you joy? And for me, I love photos. Always love photos. When I was younger, when I was living at home, I would hang pictures. I would hang photos. I loved Winnie the Pooh when I was in high school, which is very interesting. I think so much of my childhood was so serious. It was so serious and so wrapped up in intense teaching. Because, and I tell some of my friends this now, because I always talk about how I'm like Benjamin buttoning my life. I'm going like backwards. Because I was telling them, like, while y'all were out drinking and having parties, and I've said this before, I'm at all night prayers thinking about my eternal soul. Or I'm praying for your eternal soul because I think you're going to hell. So much of my youth was steeped in this like very serious, work oriented. I am not my body's not my own. I'm not my own. I belong to God. But essentially, it's I belong to the church. And what they say and their priorities, and we say God, but let's not bullshit ourselves. It's not, it is the propaganda and what is the priorities of that church building. You're giving yourself to that, which is why the demands for being present for every service and involving yourself in some sort of ministry was so at the top. If you're going to a church and by the end of the first year, you're not in a ministry, something's wrong with you. Like, that's not what you do. This is a family. You got to get involved. You got to help. So when I got my first apartment, I didn't really decorate. I had like these 2 chairs from IKEA and then a bed and a dresser and then my kitchen stuff I got from Dollar Tree. You shouldn't get like, don't ever get pots and pans from Dollar Tree. That was one thing that I learned from that. Also, Dollar Tree. Here, it's $1.25. Inflation is real, and this is a total sidebar, but I was highly disturbed. Highly. She was ringing the stuff up, and I was like, "Excuse me, ma'am, this says $1.25." And she was like, "Oh yeah, we raised our prices." And I was like, "But you're like, it says the dollar, the Dollar Tree. It doesn't say Dollars Tree. It says dollar." And that's the expectation. Do you know what I mean? And immediately, sometimes I feel like I was born to start revolutions. Because my first thought was, where are your corporate offices? What? We're just doing this and nobody's saying anything? Change your name. This is false advertisement. Anyways, sidebar. Um, when I got to my third apartment, that's when I was staying in Clarksville, I set it up the same way. And like my third apartment, my mom bought my living room furniture. Beautiful living room furniture. But that was it. Blank, like I did not decorate. And I did not like being at the house. It was like I was always so busy and so going, going, going. So even when I had my apartment in Tennessee, I didn't start decorating it until my good friend Shakana moved in with me. And she was like really into decorating, loved doing home stuff. So we had decorations and it started to feel like a home. But even still, like my stuff was so like my room was a wreck, like things were disorganized. And that's when I was teaching full time and I was pretty much working at the church. Like it was like 2 full-time jobs. And that's all I knew. It was work, work, work. There was no such thing as home. There was no such thing as just coming home and relaxing and enjoying just being in my environment and creating a safe space in my environment because this didn't feel safe. So even if, and this is true too, of even though when Shakana moved in, there was pictures on the wall and there was photos and candles and she would turn on music and it felt like what a home should feel like. But even then, I did not feel at home because I did not feel at home within myself. So this was like consistent. Then when I moved to Florida and I got to my last apartment before I started traveling, same thing happened. Now that I really wanted to decorate. I was like, okay, I've said it so many times. I really want to decorate this. And I got to putting up my vision board, which this is my vision board. my vision board became my one decoration on the wall, and that was it. And I remember I was in there for about 2 years, and people would come over and they'd be like, "Oh, did you just move in?" And I'm like, "No, I've been here 2 years." But to be fair to them, like, literally the house echoed because there was just nothing in it. But as I was winding down towards when I was getting ready to travel, I realized how much 2020 and 2021 became years for me that started to become really, really quiet. Now, obviously, 2020 was more forced because that's when we had the quarantine. But of course, in Florida, it didn't last for long. We had just a couple months and it was like, we're done. Um, but I started staying home more than I ever had in my life. I stopped working on the weekends. As an entrepreneur, like one of the beautiful parts of being an entrepreneur, I could work, I had the opportunity to work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day if I wanted to. There was no like set stop. And of course, coming from a very doing oriented environment, that fed me. So when I when I started to learn more about my need to rest, my need to disconnect, and also how much my life had been driven by tangible results, working until I couldn't work anymore, until I was in tears, and also just avoiding home. So I started to spend more time in my home. So when I started to travel, and it got to October, I got very homesick. And at the same time, I had started a romantic relationship, which I hadn't in quite some time. Which I mean, I'm sure much further down the line, I'll share more about that because there's so much to be learned in romantic relationships. But I had specifically avoided romantic relationships in my life for years. So I had started, as I was traveling, I'd started a romantic relationship that ended up being a long distance relationship. And once I got to the point of being homesick and I went home to visit, I remember driving from St. Pete or from Tampa to St. Pete. Oh, there's a huge bridge that goes um, from Tampa to St. Pete. We're going over this huge bridge and I'm in tears because right when I got on the bridge, this rush of emotions came inside of me. And at the same time, an intense calm. And the calm and the intensity was like this message in my mind. And it was just kept saying, "You're home. You're home." But I don't it was a dual message because one, I'm home in the sense of for the first time in my life, I am in an area where I feel home and I feel like I am myself and I feel like I am embraced by the people, by my community, by even by this area itself, like the weather and the vibe, like every part of my authentic being connects with this area. That was the first part of your home. The second part of your home was just feeling the rest inside of me that I have been chasing for as long as I can remember. And so much of the pain that I experienced as a little girl into teenager into adulthood has just been this consistent running to something and hoping, is this home? Is this it? Can I rest now? When can I rest? When can I just be home? When can I just be with myself and feel alive? And it was like the first time it like rushed into me. And I shared that moment with my partner. And I looked at him and I was like, "Oh my God, like I've never felt love the way that you're giving me this love." And it's a whole nother podcast about how growing up in dogmatic religion, it's very hard for to receive love that is not transactional. And it's very hard to receive love that is affirming and that just loves you for you without you having to perform it. So it was like looking at him realizing, God, your love makes me feel at home too, like on in all aspects. I went back. So after I visited, I went back to Vancouver and I started doing some maneuvering. And I was like, okay, initially I wanted to do 6 months to a year. And at that point, I was at 4 months. I was getting ready to wrap up my fourth month. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do 2 more months and I'm just going to come home. I'm going to make my way back to Florida because I'm home. Just don't. I mean, I felt comfortable in the places I stayed, don't get me wrong, but it's different. It's a different feeling of feeling comfortable and then feeling at home. And once I realized that I had found that home within, because so much of my travel, like I talked about before, was very quiet, was very internally driven, was very much putting me out in nature to find a home within myself. So on that front, like I was just feeling so calm and just so like, I'm here. I don't have to run anymore. I don't have to be scared anymore. I don't have to be searching outside of myself anymore for the feeling that was always inside. That felt really good. So as I was like making some changes to my travels, I started to panic, right? Because anytime we make plans or we make announcements or proclamations, if we don't live up to what we have in our mind, we can feel like a failure. And I struggled with those thoughts so much because how people feel about me matters to me. It's something that I continue to struggle with. And it has lost the intensity over over the years, but it's still there. Oh yeah. So I am definitely a recovering people pleaser. So as I was working through mentally the rest of my journey back home, I was having to consistently distance myself from the expectation that I was putting on myself and any expectations I felt that other people had of me, which I don't know that other people had expectations or even really cared, right? Which is usually the problem most of the time. We like create these narratives about what people will think and what people will feel about our lives and our decisions. And most of the time, they're worried about their lives. They're not thinking about us. And if they are, who cares? So I was going on a drive. It was my last week in Vancouver, Washington, and I'm going on a drive and I'm talking to my dad as I did for so much of my trip. I'm talking to my dad and I'm like, "Dad, what would you call this last part of my journey? What would you call this?" And I just felt like my dad spoke to me and said, "Love is leading you home." And I sat there for a little bit to just internalize this whole phrase. And the first part of it is that what has led me to home within myself is love. And it's been the incredibly difficult part of my journey that has challenged me to genuinely love me, but not love the Amy that I want everyone to see and the Amy that I need everyone to see because I need that validation or affirmation, not the Amy that's perceived as wise or the Amy that's the go to, like, the Amy that can talk really well or the Amy that gives great advice. Like, I need people to see me that way, right? Like, there was a time in my life where that fed me, that gave me life because I wasn't loving myself. So it's like, I have to present a version that I know I'm going to get feedback that's going to fill me and encourage me. But then when I go home, I don't believe any of it. And none of it sustains me. And none of it makes me happy. And none of it really makes me love me. But in the moment, it feels good. Right. So, and then it's exhausting because now I'm always having to show up as that Amy to other people. So now my assignments, I got to go to my assignments, my relationships. You're my assignment. Okay. So now what do I need to do? Okay. So you're codependent. That's great. Okay. So I need to make sure that I am giving you great advice and I'm being there for you, and nothing that you ever do bothers me. And, every time I show up, it's what's bringing you joy. What can I do to bring you joy? I matter not at all. But when I leave, you're going to say, wow, I have never felt more seen. Wow, you've changed my life. Wow, your words, they make a difference for me. And it's like, yes, 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 yes. Right? It's like a drug. It's like dopamine. Yes, thank you. You see me. You love me. And then I go home and it's empty because I go to a physical home, but I don't know how to go to my home, which is inside, the home to the Amy who is not responsible for everybody else. The Amy who is not responsible for everybody else's emotions. The Amy who is not even responsible for how other people feel about her. The Amy that is so fucking messy. The Amy who gets depressed sometimes. The Amy who overworks. The Amy who can be rude. The Amy who can talk shit about people. The Amy that's judgmental. That shit is real. I wanted to find a home there. But to find a home there meant that first I had to show myself, I had to allow that part of myself out. And that journey looks different for everyone, but it's a necessary journey. And you know what's crazy? Usually, the most difficult relationships in our lives, the ones that we run from, the ones that we say, oh, I'm going to cut you out immediately. The ones that we are so quick to cut sometimes are our greatest teachers. And do with this information as you will. I'm not an expert at this. I'm just telling you stories, things that have worked for me, but please don't apply. Know what's going to work for you. Sometimes I have thought to myself that I have kept so many relationships in my life that I long should have gotten rid of. I should have cut them off a long time ago, right? We have that like concept. But at the same time, some of the relationships that I've kept in my life, they are relationships that consistently challenge me about me. It's funny because when when me and my partner decided to, and I say partner, me and my boyfriend decided to, um, or when I started dating, I, you have expectations, and of course, I've known him for a while, so we've skipped over a lot of the shit that comes with just starting a new relationship because we've been knowing each other for over 4 years. But the expectations when you get into a romantic relationship is it should look like this, and it should feel like this. And if it doesn't look, and all these things are positive, right? That person, they should be supportive, they should be respectful, they should. But a lot of times in that, we don't incorporate our own trauma and baggage that we bring to the table. And the fact that nobody can touch that level of trauma and baggage like somebody you're in an intimate relationship with. And it is very easy to say, you're bringing distress into my life, get the fuck out. It's very easy to say that as opposed to saying, okay, I notice that you keep bringing up this dark side of me. I don't like this dark side. I take great lengths to push her down. But you have a way of pulling this bitch up. And I need to see her because she's a part of me. And she's a part of my home. And even if she makes my home a little bit chaotic, I have to know that she's still there. I have to acquaint myself with her. And then I have to decide what to do with her. Because the other side of it is anyone who really shows me has to get out. That makes you live such a one-dimensional life. And then all the people that are in your life only know a cleaned up version of you, which means you can only acquaint yourself with the cleaned up version of you. Meanwhile, a whole different side of you, you are spending an incredible amount of energy shoving down and shutting up. But she's still there. He's still there. And whether we want to believe it or not, she has something to teach you. My dark side has so much more to teach me than the side that's in the light because I know the side that's in the light. She's there. She's easy. I've acquainted myself with her. She's great. But the other side, she's the side that she scares me. She shows me sides of myself that don't make me happy. And she also shows me truth about myself that means I have to make a decision. Now, sometimes I don't want to make that decision. But the beautiful part about coming home is that home is messy. It's messy. But when I acknowledge that it's messy, it gives me the opportunity to really clean it. And it gives me the opportunity to relax. So that if somebody wants to be a visitor in my home, I don't have to freak out. And come on in. I'm not trying to show you the pretty parts, right? Like the thing that's most exhausting is when our home always has to look a certain way. We don't want people to see certain sides of us. So it's like the minute somebody wants to come into our home, it's like, oh, let me get this shit out. All right. Take great pains, everything, throw it in the closet quickly. Right? I remember me and my sister used to do that. Every time my mom would be like, clean this room, get it over with, get it done. God, we were slaps. You throw everything under the bed, throw everything in the closet, and it's like, God, this room is beautiful. And people are going to come in your room, come in your home. They're going to think, oh my God, she's so put together. Look at this. Meanwhile, they don't know you got shit piled up in your closet. And if they dare touch it, imagine how mortified. Because now not only do they know that you are a fucking messy person, but they're also going to know, oh, things are not as they appear. But if I'm at home with myself, I can let you come in and say, come on in. So you'll notice that this drawer right here, it's the junk drawer. I haven't addressed it yet. This is where I just throw all my shit, but just know it's here. It's pretty junky. And that's just me. I'm not going to clean it just because you're here. I might not even pretend that I plan on cleaning it. That I'm not ready to touch it. So get accustomed. You know, it's a different sort of feeling. And it's like when you grow up in an environment where the expectation is that home is not within, because the first thing that happens is you are it's demonized. Your internal home is demonized. This isn't your home anyways. This is where God is supposed to be. And then once God comes into your home and apparently cleans it out, right? It's supposed to come in, clean it up, clean up your dirty, filthy home, the space within. Now, that home is controlled by God. And you don't know this God who's inside of you, who's apparently cleaned up your home. So first you got to be thankful because apparently he's done a great thing. Even if you feel like it's not great, and even if you feel like this God being inside of you is fucking exhausting, and all he wants is for you to do, and go, and he just keeps reminding you what a trash human being you are, don't listen to your feelings because those are lies. And because you don't really know that God, you are encouraged to know that God through somebody else's subjective teaching about who that God is. And the only way that that God can make that organization money is that this God has to convince you that you are trash and that you're not a good person. So you got to keep going back to this organization who's going to tell you who this God is so that you can understand your feelings and what he's apparently communicating, because you can't get it on your own. You got to go to a church. Then once you go to that church, this God within is always going to tell you to keep working. It will never be enough. You shouldn't be resting. And every time you leave, this God within is going to say, no, this isn't about you. And when you go to someone, you have to show them the pretty sides. If you don't show them the ugly sides, because then they're not going to want the God that's inside of you. So now you got to pretend. God, I could go on and on. But when you get rid of that version of a divinity and you get rid of that bullshit and you start to really look at your home for what it is and really understand why you don't feel at rest in it. And then you start making the decisions of how you want to clean it out and what you want your home to look like. and the type of photos you want on the walls and what color you want to paint, there's no feeling like it. Which means that I could stay in St. Pete, Florida for the rest of my life, or I can fly over to Thailand and I'll still be at home. That's an amazing revelation, but not just a revelation, because there's a difference between something being a revelation and something being an action-based transformation. The action-based transformation is when it goes from being just a pretty cliche to being something you're actually living. It's a different type of lifestyle. But I'll also tell you that when you find your home, shit gets messy. Because now you've opened your closets, you've gotten all the shit out from underneath the bed. And now you got to figure out a lot of the shit I've been hiding in my home, and it's real cluttered. So now what do I want to hold on to and what do I want to get rid of? And that's the fucking scary part. And that's something I'm going to talk about next time, because that's a whole other subject matter. But I want to encourage you. Well, first, I want to ask you the question. Do you feel at home within yourself? I'm not talking about where you live, even though that is a huge part of it too. Like, finding a place that matches your vibe is really important. And I've learned that. Like, if I tried to move back to Indiana, where I grew up in, oh my God. I don't like cold. The cold doesn't vibe well. I need sunshine. They're just like personality wise, that like area. It's not my vibe. But when it's just you with you, do you feel at home? Do you feel that when you're by yourself, you don't have to perform, you don't have to do you feel at home? And another question is, do you even know what that feels like? Because some of us we don't know where that feeling is because we've never felt it. Right? So it's okay to even say, I don't know. But I think the first place starts in, when you are sitting by yourself, are you searching? Are you seeking? Are you trying to fill a void? Are you trying to put noise? Are you trying to incorporate people? Are you looking for the next thing, the next adventure, the next place to move, the next career? I get it. God, every 3 to 5 years, I either moved locations within the area or just moved full locations. Do you feel at home with yourself? And if the answer is no, what do you want to do about it? And only you can answer that question. And sometimes it's about asking questions, but it's also about just opening yourself up to saying, I want this. I don't have it, but I want it. And I remember saying that. I remember saying that in 2020. I want to settle within. I don't know. I mean, like, I love settling in a location, a physical location, but more importantly, I kept saying, I want to settle within myself, whatever that means. And I didn't know what it meant. But it always, for me, has started with some sort of proclamation or declaration of what I wanted. And then the universe conspires to allow that to occur for me without me having to figure out steps. And that could be the first place that you start, is just proclaiming what it is that you want. What do you want to feel? How do you want to feel? And go from there. So until next time, I will see you all on the next episode of Free Your Story, Free Your Life. Take care.